Good afternoon to all the audience. This is Shubham, senior psychologist, and I completed my PhD degree in clinical psychology from Banaras University, and currently I'm pursuing a postgraduate diploma in counseling and psychotherapy. And also I completed my diploma degree in fluid and this channel, Life Rhythm Counseling. This is an online platform for mental health support. So if you are suffering from any mental health issues or emotional health issues, you can contact us. So for today webinar, our webinar topic is spiritual coping, and our resource person is Dr. Shalini Purohit. She is a chartered psychologist and also a hypnotherapist, and currently she is working as a volunteer in a so hello ma'am.
आपकी आपकी वॉइस ब्रेक हो रही थी शुभम। हेलो शुभम।
Hello ma'am, can you hear
Can
me?
you? Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes ma'am. Correct. Actually, network issues, ma'am.
Yeah.
So today our webinar topic is spiritual coping, and our resource person is Dr. Shalini Purohit, ma'am, from London. So thank you, ma'am, for joining us and you're giving for a time. And now, ma'am, it is your time. Please proceed, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Shubham. Thank you for inviting me for this webinar. And as we all know that today's webinar is about spirituality and spiritual coping. So when I came to know that Shubham is learning and is very good at playing flute, so I suggested him that why not we should start the webinar with a piece of music from him. So before I start, I would like to invite Shubham to play some flute for us.
Okay, ma'am. I'm playing a little about just a Krishna tune. So
Sure.
ये मैम एक छोटा सा राग हंस ध्वनि में है ये। तो मैं इसको बजा के अब प्ले कर रहा हूँ छोटा सा।
That was beautiful. Shubham. Thank you. Thank you for the experience.
So now, ma'am, mic is.
Yeah, I will start with my presentation now. So, once again, I welcome you all. Hello, everyone. So, today we are going to talk about spiritual coping. I don't want to get into too much definitions about spirituality. This is something I found really interesting, and it is kind of something which really relates to what spirituality is. I follow Sadhguru a lot, and that's why his explanation of spirituality I'm sharing with you all. To add to this, I would like to say that spirituality is like a garden in your house. If the soil, the sunlight, or the stem of a plant is in a certain way, it is not going to yield flowers. You will have to do something. You have to take care of those things. So, according to me, spirituality is about personal growth. It's a process of inner change and development, which can be described as an awakening, enlightenment, or achieving wholeness. We should also understand that spirituality is an intrinsic motivational force. So you engage in it solely for because you enjoy it, and you get this personal satisfaction from this. So it is not something that can be forced upon you. It is something you choose on your own, you choose by yourself. Moving on, uh, let's discuss about coping and resilience before we discuss about spiritual coping. So, when we talk about coping, coping is your effort or our efforts to deal with a stressor. So, what are our conscious responses to these stressors? How do we consciously handle these stresses? So there are many ways. Examples are could be physical activity or exercise. It could be seeking support or talking about the stress. It could be problem solving, where you identify a problem, then you develop and put into some action to bring out some potential solutions. And I haven't added here in the slide, but I would like to briefly discuss the coping styles as well. So we know there are mainly three types of coping styles. First is task oriented, second is emotion oriented, and the third coping style is the avoidance oriented. So, when we talk about task oriented, these are efforts that we put in, and these are efforts which are aimed at solving the problem. When we talk about emotion oriented coping styles, it involves emotional reactions, our emotional reactions. So, if a person tries to seek help from a therapist or tries to talk it out with a psychologist, it's an emotion oriented coping style. And the third is avoidance oriented. So, it involves the activities and cognitions aimed at avoiding the stressor, avoiding the situation. At present, I'm a mentor to a student who's having mental health issues, and she has strong issues with her emotional issues with her parents, related with her parents. So when she is doing her coursework in university, she stays at a student accommodation. But as university closes here in July, so she will have to move back to her place. So she is thinking ways where it is possible that she doesn't have to go to her parents' house. So this is a type of avoidance oriented coping style where she is trying to avoid the stressor rather than face it. So when we talk of avoidance oriented coping style, it is the absence of our attempts to alter the situation. So we are not putting in any attempts to alter that particular situation. The first two coping styles, that is task oriented and emotion oriented, they are used for better adjustment. So we can say they are more of an adaptive coping style. Now let's move on to resilience. That we now that we know what coping is and what coping mechanisms are. So when we talk about resilience, resilience is your internal capacity to rebound. It is your adaptation skill during challenging life experiences. So how do you adapt when you are faced with a stressor or a challenging life situation? And you will be, this is a point to note, that you will be more resilient when you have healthy coping mechanisms in place. Now, let's just discuss two very common examples for coping and resilience. So, when we talk about coping, just think that a person, or you had a very long day, a tiring day, where your superior or your boss was angry with you or was not happy with your work or something like that, and you have been feeling very tired. You come home, you have a meal, and then you switch on the TV and you try to watch a movie that you like, or you try to watch a favorite show, or you just call a very close friend and vent out your feelings. Sorry. So this is your coping. This is your coping style. This is your coping mechanism that you are using to unwind yourself from a very long day. Excuse me. And for resilience, the example could be that you had a challenging life event or a stressful life event. For example, you suffered a loss, or you experienced a breakup, a relationship breakup, or you are grieving for the loss of a family member. So within few days, sometimes within just 1 or 2 days, you just resume with all the activities you have been doing before that challenging life situation. So that is how you rebound, that is you how you successfully get back into action. So that shows how resilient a person is, and that is only possible when you have been following adaptive coping mechanisms in your life on a regular basis or in a day to day basis. So, now let's move on to the contributing factors for adaptation. Other than healthy coping mechanisms, what are the other factors that can contribute in adaptation or becoming resilient? So, moving on to the first factor, it's very understandable that some of us view the world as being hostile, while some of us view world as a place for learning and opportunities for growth. So it is an individual's view how they look at the world. So, how you adapt or adjust or function optimally in various domains in your surroundings will depend on your own personal view. So, how strong your view is, how adaptive your view is with regard to the world, will help you develop positive or good coping mechanisms. Moving on to the social resources. So, when we talk about social resources, we can say such as love and affection or status within the society. So, actually, these are resources embedded in your own social connections. So, that is another factor which helps in your adaptation. And the network, also when we talk about social resources, the network and relationships an individual has that provide support and feedback in times of need or in times of challenging situations, also is a factor that helps you adapt or contribute towards developing your adaptation. And then there are specific coping strategies that we will talk about in further slides. Now, coming on to our topic, spiritual coping. Before we discuss spiritual coping, because I did not wanted to include religion here, although we mostly link spirituality to religion, but I wanted it to be just the spiritual component. But let's in brief discuss about spiritual religious coping as well. So, when we talk about spiritual religious coping, it is the use of our religious beliefs, our attitudes, or practices to reduce the emotional distress that we feel, or the emotional distress that is caused by the stressful events in our life. The spiritual religious coping part, it kind of gives suffering a meaning, and then it makes it more bearable for us. And that's the reason we try to lean on religious methods or spiritual methods for coping, because we kind of know the reason why we are suffering, and it becomes easy for us to move on. So now again, moving on to this slide. So when we talk about spiritual coping, Uh, it is coping that incorporates a person. A person finds like something that is sacred. It could be God or the concept of divine. It could be some kind of music. It could be a book. And spiritual coping can consist of behaviors. So, for example, behaviors could be praying, like chanting, and the thought that I like, or I will pray with my community. When we talk about thoughts in spiritual coping, thoughts like God is by one's side through a crisis, or my community will be with me in times of crisis. So these are the thoughts, or there are many other thoughts that we use as part of our spiritual coping. Then it could be feelings, like experiencing emotional intimacy within one's religious community, or the thought that I love my community. And when we come to attitudes, attitudes are like trusting in a larger spiritual plan for one's life. We can also talk about beliefs here. So, belief could be that some order or power greater than ourselves can help us maintain hope. This is what our religion teaches us as we grow up, or what our elders, our parents teach us as we grow up from being a child. And if we hold on to these beliefs, these can be our coping mechanisms in challenging times. I would like to share a belief by Dr. Brian Weiss. I follow him, and I have almost like read all of his books, and I find it very spiritually enriching. So, a belief or a quote can be taken from his book where he says that we choose our own life path. So, if we are in a challenging situation or a stressful situation, and we think of this belief, we bring it to a conscious that I have chosen this life path for my own spiritual awakening, then that stress becomes so easier to handle for us because we realize it is us who have chosen all of this. So these are the beliefs, the attitudes, the thoughts, and the behaviors can help that can help us in our spiritual coping. Now let's understand how spiritual coping can help us. So it can help us to feel a sense of purpose that why we are here, why we are living a particular kind of life, and uncover what's most meaningful in your life. By prioritizing, you can eliminate unimportant things and stress. It also promotes internal locus of control, and people with strong internal locus of control believe in I control things. It's all in me. I control the consequences of my behavior. I find these statements quite powerful because it makes us believe that it is our responsibility, and it is uh, our effort that is going to change things around us. Because when you have strong internal locus of control, because you believe events in your life derive from your own actions, and that is I find something really powerful to use in a day-to-day life. Coming on to reframing can help as it is a process where situations or thoughts are challenged and then changed. So, for example, you are in a bad life phase, and you have these thoughts. I believe many of you would be practicing psychologist or studying psychology, and you must have talked to people where they say why this is happening to me, why God has chosen me for this suffering. So if we help them, or if a person can reframe that statement and change it to a simpler statement like whatever happens happens for good, so it will help you cope better with the situation. Moving on to the next point, where it says connect to the world. When you have a feeling that you have a purpose in the world and you have a reason to be here, this can lead to valuable inner peace during difficult times. And talking about releasing control. So, when you feel you are just a part of a greater whole, you realize that you aren't responsible for everything that happens around you or in your life, and you start to share the burden. You release the control and you start sharing it with people or your family around you. And spiritual coping can also help in expanding your support network. So when you share your spiritual expression, you can build healthier and stronger relationships. And overall, this all helps you to lead a healthier life. Now, let's move on to how to cultivate spiritual coping. We can try, and we all do, I believe, that we do prayer, we meditate, we practice mindfulness and relaxation techniques, and this helps us focus our thoughts and find peace of mind. We can start keeping a journal, and we can write our internal dialogue in that journal. We can write our newly achieved perspectives in that journal, and whenever we need, we can just open our journal and we can read those internal dialogues or read the perspectives that we have created, and it can help us bring more thought clarity. We can seek out a trusted advisor, a friend, or a mentor. Why should we be doing this? Because when we talk to other people sometimes may have insights you haven't discovered yet. So it is important that we go out and we talk to an advisor or a friend or a mentor. We can read inspirational books or stories, because usually books have all the answers. So inculcating a habit of reading can really help us in cultivating spiritual coping. And by reading different scriptures or books or stories, you can also evaluate different philosophies of life. I would like to engage our audience here at some point. I would like you to share in the comments, if possible, some books that you have found really helpful, and we can then add those books in the description of this video later on. Next, moving on to the next point, how we can cultivate spiritual coping by contributing to community, by volunteering or donating. So what happens is that when you give to community or when you give to the society, it brings in satisfaction, it brings in a sense of purpose, it brings in some meaning to your life, which really helps to develop a good coping mechanism. Spending time in nature, because it helps in centering yourself, it helps in feeling grounded. Mostly grounding techniques are used with people who have anxiety issues or who have been through a trauma. But I believe we can use grounding in our day to day life to bring ourselves back to senses, back to the present moment, in the present situation. So spending time in nature is one of the techniques of grounding. Spending more time with your family and community can also help in cultivating your spiritual coping. We all know that, we all are aware of that. And I would say, to make new habits part of your lifestyle easy, we should start with small steps. So we should start with, like, just for example, we can start with 5 to 10 minutes of silence each day, and then gradually we can move on to bigger steps. When we talk about optimistic explanatory style, I would like to briefly explain it here. So, it is about getting curious, asking more questions, slowing down while we are talking, or slowing down how you speak, and exploring within while speaking. So that is all part of optimistic explanatory style. And the last is that choosing love and respect can cultivate spiritual coping. How? So if you are in a awkward situation, or for example, like in between an argument or disagreement with somebody, if you just try to be calm in that situation, it will help de escalate that situation. So, just keeping yourself calm in that particular situation and choosing to show love and respect for the other people will bring down that situation, and it will be more easier to resolve. Before starting with this slide, I would like to add that when your life is having a spiritual path, problems are not obstacles, but instead opportunities for growth and learning, and it completely changes your perspective. Now, let's talk about some self empowerment techniques which we can see in our ancient history as well. Some of these are still followed, and many are forgotten, but we can bring them back into our lives, as these are all coping mechanisms. These are just not techniques, these are all coping mechanisms which take us a step closer to spirituality, thus self empowering us. So, first is tapasya, and tapasya is not part of just one religion. I think it is universal. It is present everywhere, and tapasya is mainly reasoned self discipline and efforts to achieve self realization. Uh, a very relevant example of tapasya in present scenario could be that we do not use our phones for one day, or we don't visit social media for one day. That would be our tapasya in the present situation. And when we talk about mudras, it is simply a combination of different fingers and thumb joined together. It is believed to balance your energies. Crystals, it is about interaction of body's magnetic field and getting rid of toxic negative energy. Ancient people mainly focused on raw food diet because it has a calming and detoxifying effect on your body. Acupressure, we all know it is a therapy which involves pressure points. Chanting, we all do in different religions in different forms. It helps in to bring awareness to present moment. Again, it is chanting is a part of grounding and centering. Yoga, again, we all know about this. It is helps in restoring healthy flow of energies. Barefoot walking is another technique of grounding because it helps in to draw energies that lies within the earth. It is like creating a connection of you with earth. And last is chromotherapy or chakra healing. So this heals the energy imbalances that is created in your body. The reason I mentioned all of these is that it's worth noticing that all these practices help in balancing our energies, and spiritual coping becomes easy when our internal energies are balanced. So, before cultivating in spiritual coping, we can think of choosing these self empowerment techniques and trying to create a balance of energy within us. And then we can start cultivating spiritual coping by the techniques or methods I discussed in the earlier slide. Now, here I would like to talk about this spiritual wellness inventory. This is an inventory which is available on internet, and we will put a description, the link of this inventory in the description of this video, so everybody can access it. So it was developed in 1998, and it talks about these mentioned 10 spiritual dimensions. And this can be used for personal exploration. Also, it can be used by counselors or therapists to explore the spirituality or spiritual coping mechanisms of their clients. So the person who developed this inventory, he wanted to develop a vocabulary for counselors so that they can talk about spirituality with their clients that wasn't religious. So the best part that I like about this inventory is religion is not involved. It is all about spirituality. Now, I will try to briefly talk about these 10 spiritual dimensions. So, the first dimension is your conception of God, and what it is that makes life meaningful for you. So, this is what is explored in the first dimension. In the second dimension, individual sense of a meaningful life and individual sense of purpose. In the third dimension, the sense of belonging, how you connect with people and your surroundings. When we talk about mystery, is how a person deals with the uncertainties of life, or a person's comfort level with awe and wonder. Spiritual freedom, it's a sense of freedom from fear and a desire in living. Talking about experiences and rituals. Rituals in person's life are helpful because it helps the person become present, centered, and it helps in reconnecting with others, because mostly you don't perform a ritual alone, you perform in a group, so it brings in the connectedness. And it also involves the experiences around a ritual. When you perform a ritual, the experiences that you experience while doing that. Forgiveness, it's the attitude towards giving and receiving forgiveness. Hope, one's suffering is not not going to last forever. So in this dimension, it is explored what hopes the person or the client carries. Knowledge of self and what is external. is the next dimension. And the last one is being mindful. What is explored is how a person is being mindful in his day to day life. I believe this inventory is going to help you all to explore your own spiritual dimensions in detail. To conclude, what actually is spiritual well-being? As you can see, it is not just one thing. It is about reflecting your positive feelings. It is about your behaviors, your cognitions of relationship with yourself, with others, with nature, and this all provides the individual with a sense of an identity, a completeness. It definitely brings in satisfaction, joy, contentment, inner peace, and harmony. And it also gives a purpose and direction in life. So, it is important in the end that your adaptive coping mechanisms are always in place. It could be any, but if you think of getting strengthened spiritually, you should look for spiritual coping, the methods that can bring in harmony and peace within you. These are just few of the readings, suggested readings or shows and movies. The movies or show that I have added are are few that I have recently watched, and I felt really good and empowered after watching them, and that's why I'm sharing them with you. First few are the books that I have read. There are many more, but these are the books that have really given me a perspective towards life, towards coping mechanisms. So I would highly recommend you to go through these and, if possible, read these and inculcate some coping mechanisms or some statements from these books which can help you in your challenging times. So that is all for today's presentation. I wish you all well in these challenging times, and I'm hopeful that the things I have shared in today's presentation will help you in some ways. Thank you everybody for your patience. Thank you so much.
So कुछ comments आए हुए हैं मैम हम लोगों के पास.
Yeah,
So,
1 second.
एक डॉक्टर मुस्तफा नदीम किरमानी सर से आया हुआ है. सो मैं इसको शो करने जा रहा हूँ आपके स्क्रीन पे. कुछ उन्होंने सजेशन किया
Sure.
हुआ है कुछ बुक्स के बारे में. ये पहला कमेंट है उनका.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. Nice to know. Thank you. If there are any questions,
No, ma'am. There are no questions. Only for
I have,
suggestions for us.
can I?
Last day.
yeah, sure.
सो मैम, जैसा कि हम लोग सब देख रहे हैं कि इस पैंडमिक में काफ़ी सिचुएशन क्रिटिकल होती जा रही हैं, एंड पीपल्स आर वेरी मच अफ्रेड ऑफ दीज थिंग्स, लाइक किसी की डेथ हो जाना, एंड होपलेसनेस ज़्यादा आने लगी है इस केसेस में. तो यहाँ पे बीइंग अ साइकोलॉजिस्ट हम कैसे किसी को इस स्पिरिचुअल कोपिंग स्ट्रेटजी को अपनाने के लिए कर सकते हैं?
Yeah, so it is very important first to understand what is their religion or what coping strategies their religion teaches them, right?
Yes, ma'am.
But if we are unable to do that directly, that's why I included that inventory here. So we can use that inventory to open a channel of dialogue with the client or with the person to explore their spiritual dimensions. And if we find they are lacking in particular dimension, or if they are struggling to understand a particular dimension, we as psychologists can use certain measures to help them develop that particular dimension.
Okay, ma'am. So, ma'am, instead of this inventory, कोई और स्केल इसके लिए है जिससे हम स्पिरिचुअल कोपिंग मेजर कर सकते हैं?
Yeah, that is actually right of you to ask. But to tell you, when I was working on this presentation and this topic, actually, I was unable to come across any other good scale. So, if there are some people in the audience who can enlighten us with any other scale, I would love to know their views.
ओके, थैंक यू सो मच मैम।
You're welcome.
यहाँ मैं अपने ऑडियंस को बताना चाहता हूँ कि हम लोग ऑनलाइन काउंसलिंग और साइकोथेरेपीज को भी प्रोवाइड करते हैं। तो हमारे यहाँ दोनों तरह के काउंसलर्स हैं, मेल और फीमेल दोनों। अगर कोई ऐसा वो है आपके जानकारी में, आपके आसपास, आपकी सोसाइटी में, जो कि मेंटल हेल्थ इश्यूज से, किसी इमोशनल इश्यूज से सफर कर रहा है, तो देन आप उसे हम लोग को सजेस्ट कर सकते हैं, वो हमें कांटेक्ट कर सकते हैं। सो अगर ऐसा कोई पर्सन है जो कहीं से फाइनेंशियली वीक है या जो भी है, अगर वो पे भी नहीं कर सकता, देन फिर भी इसके बावजूद हम लोग उसे हेल्प करने के लिए तैयार हैं। सो यहाँ पे हम लोग के लिए फिलहाल पर्सन ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है से। सो अगर आपके आसपास में कोई भी ऐसा हो, तो देन शुड कॉन्टेक्ट नाउ। सो थैंक यू मैम फॉर योर प्रेजेंटेशन, and I hope we will connect soon in our next webinar.
Sure,
And
Shubham.
I
Thank you so much.
थैंक यू सो
and I
मच मैम।
also
इट्स अ ग्रेट सेशन विथ यू
Thank
एंड
you,
होप
Pooja.
हम जल्दी मिलेंगे फिर से।
Sure, definitely. And thank you everyone who was watching, who took out their time to watch the session.
so thank you, ma'am. Hmm.
करके हम बुढ़िया बन गए
शुभम, अभी भी लाइव है सेशन।
हाँ मैम, एक क्वेश्चन और आया सर से। एक्चुअली सर एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर है अमिटी यूनिवर्सिटी में, और इनका भी काम स्पिरिचुअल कॉपिंग पे हुआ है काफी। तो सर
Okay.
काफी क्यूरियस थे इस टॉपिक को लेकर के, तो उन्होंने कमेंट और यहाँ पे किया, मैं आपको शो कर सर का।
That's wonderful to know. Thank you for the insight, sir.
थैंक यू सर। तो अब हम लोग एंड करने वाले हैं इसको।